Hello, CS112. Today I'll be going over a quick solution to Lab 11, which has to do with exception handling. The function you were to create was called count vowels, where you would be given a string and return how many vowels is in that string. So for example, if you were given the string that looks like this, you would count the vowels and return a string that says the sentence contains 11 vowels because there are 11 vowels in here. It gave you what the vowels are, as well as some functions you can use, namely, is alpha, is digit, stuff like that. So I already have the test cases down here, so let's just dive right into it. Or sorry, we also need to talk about the actual errors you need to raise. So you need to use a try except block as well as the raise function, and it gives you the 3 errors to look out for. One is if it is not a string, raise a type error, saying the inputs should be a string. If it is an empty string, raise a value error saying this string cannot be empty. And if there are any non-alphanumeric characters, you're going to raise a value error saying the input string should only contain alphabetic characters. So now to just dive right into it, I'm going to set a vowel or a variable called vowels. If I can type vowels equals, and I'm just going to say A, E, I, O, U. And then I'm going to create the vowel count variable and set that equal to 0. Next, I'm going to actually create my try except structure, and I'm just going to start by checking the very first 2 errors which we should check. One is if the string is empty, and the other is if we're passed in an integer, because those are 2 of the very first errors we should just check right away. So one is if s is equal to an empty string. You can also check if the length of s is 0. You're going to raise a value error with the message input string cannot be empty. And then I'm going to have an except block here that just says accept value error as v. And I'm just going to say return v. So the way this would work is once this value error is raised, it will go into the accept block. You can have multiple accept blocks, but it will search for the value error. And as v just represents what you're passing through to the value error. In this case, we're passing through an error message. And we're just going to return that string, which is our error message. Let's move on to the next thing we have to check, which is if we are given an integer, we need to check if it is an integer. So I'm going to say if type of s is equal to an integer, then we are going to raise a type error with the error message saying input should be a string. So now I'm going to have to create another one of these guys. I'm just going to copy and paste it. However, this time I will be saying type error. So I'm just going to change this to type error and type error as t. These are just random variables. They can be named whatever you want. And as you guys should know, if I just wanted like a catch-all, I can just say like accept exception as e or whatever you want. That's kind of like a catch-all. But if you want to catch and return a very specific type of error, that's when you would use these specific types of errors. I'm sure you guys know about the whole hierarchy by now. So let's now actually try to solve the problem. So for I and A, because we can iterate through a string kind of like a list, so we want to say if it is alphabetic, then we want to do the actual work, check if it is a vowel, and then add it to the incremented, or increment the vowel count variable as needed. But if it's not alphabetic, if it's a non-alphabetic variable, then we'll raise the error. So the very first thing I'm going to do is if I dot is alpha, which will return true if it is an alphabetic number, or if I is equal to an empty character, because for the sake of this assignment, as you can see here, these space characters are considered alphabetic, or they're not, they shouldn't raise an error. I'm going to say if I in vowels, so that's why I created a vowels string here, so I can just quickly say if I in vowels, I'm going to say vowel counts plus equals 1, and then I'm going to start handling the error. So this means if it is not an alphabetic number. So in this case, when we hand in this address here, The two, while it is a string, it's not going to be, this will return false, and it will go into this else block here. So else, I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to raise a value error, and this value error will say inputs string should only contain alphabetic characters. And then lastly, if we get through this entire loop and we had got no errors, then we want to actually return the described output. So the sentence contains vowel counts of vowels, I believe is the word. Now if we were to just test out this bad boy here, now is to run py cat.py. As you can see, I got an invalid syntax error, which is perfectly fine. Let's find out what it is. So I'm saying here, if I dot is alpha or I is equal to an empty string, well, that is because I said equals and didn't use the equivalency operator. Now we have another typo because I used A instead of S. Now again, all right, so here we go. Finally, after solving those quick errors, we get the correct output. So, I mean, you can see for yourself this is the correct output. But if you guys do have any additional questions, this is very relevant to part 2 of project 6. So it's good to become comfortable with this stuff. It's probably always also going to be a very heavy topic on the final exam. So yeah, just become comfortable with using try, raising a specific error, and then displaying that error as you want. It's a very graceful way to handle errors in code.